subordinate clause. A subordinate clause, sometimes called the dependent clause, does not, it's the key point there, does not express a complete thought and cannot stand alone in a sentence. Remember, we had a word for this. If it's standing alone, not part of a sentence, we call this a fragment. Remember, a sentence expresses a complete thought. A subordinate clause cannot do that. Subordinate clause allows our sentence to expand by providing additional information. Okay, so they're really important, but they cannot exist on their own. And as you'll see, the subordinate clause often comes with punctuation, with that comma. So they're really quite important for us to recognize. We're going to go over two types of subordinate clauses. One with the relative pronoun, the other with a subordinating conjunction. If you think back to those pronouns, right? We went over earlier the relative pronoun. Remember, the relative pronouns look a lot like those interrogative pronouns, but they're quite different in the role that they play in the sentence as they're beginning a clause. We also have these subordinating conjunctions, and I've listed for you on the screen the most common ones. Ones that will be quite important for a lot of the writing that we do, but be words like although, because, since, while. These subordinating conjunctions often begin clauses that may start a sentence or end a sentence, and frequently will include with that clause a comma. Let's take a look at the relative clause. Now, the first sentence has that word who in it. All right? Now, who, like many of the other kinds of words that we've seen so far, in one sentence it might be an interrogative pronoun, and in another it could be a relative pronoun. All right? So here, who is the person I trust the most? Who is the person I trust the most? Well, it's pretty easy to determine that that's an interrogative pronoun, isn't it? At the end of the sentence, we have that question mark. Right? It's being used to ask a question. It is not being used to start a clause. She is the person whom I trust the most. So here, the whom is a relative pronoun beginning this relative clause, whom I trust the most. In our next sentence, the guitar is the only instrument that I can play. That. Remember, in a different sentence, that might be a demonstrative pronoun. That guitar. So here we have a demonstrative pronoun. That's describing this noun. Here, this that is beginning a whole new section of our sentence, a new segment, right, that we call the relative clause. It cannot exist on its own. That's why it's dependent. It's dependent on the main clause of the sentence. Just everything that comes before it in this case. All right? It needs that main clause. Many subordinate clauses begin with that subordinating conjunction. And again, recognizing where you have a subordinate clause beginning with the subordinating conjunction is quite important for the kinds of sentences that you can write. These clauses might begin a sentence, they often end a sentence, and when they begin and end a sentence, we include with them very frequently a comma. All right? And one of the neat things about these kinds of clauses is that we can often move them around. So when we see that we can move them around, we recognize that we can write a variety of sentence types. So our writing isn't boring. Because who wants a boring piece of writing? Not I, and I believe not you either. Let's take a look at this sentence. While her brother played outside, she stayed inside to read. So while, this is my subordinating conjunction. There it is, while. And then I need to find the end of that clause so I know where to put my comma. There it is, right? While her brother played outside, she stayed inside to read. Right? So the she stayed begins the main clause of my sentence. And like I said before, seeing the subordinating conjunction that's beginning this clause is a clue to you that you have choices. Right? Writing is all about choices. You control this. So it starts the sentence, but it's possible to end the sentence with it. Right? Instead, we can move this to the end. Can we not? So we would have while her brother played outside. Period. While her brother played outside, she stayed inside to read. Let's shift that clause to the end of the sentence. She stayed inside to read while her brother played outside. Now, if I move that clause to the end of the sentence, I'm going to put a comma there. All right? So at the end of the main clause, I'll have that comma there. All right? She stayed inside to read, comma, while her brother played outside. You might want that phrase at the end of that clause at the end of the sentence, depending on what you want to emphasize to your audience. If you want your audience to be thinking about her first and the brother second, you might want to start the sentence with she stayed. Whereas if you start the sentence while her brother played outside, her brother gets the greater emphasis. Let's take a look at our second sentence. You're going to see similar kinds of choices that can be made, right? And those choices exist because we're starting our sentence with a subordinating conjunction, right? Because it was lightning outside, we decided not to fly our kite. A wise choice, I must say. So, because it was lightning outside, here is our subordinating conjunction. All right? We're going to find the end of that clause. Here it is, with outside. Because it was lightning outside, since my clause ends there, I need to put a comma before I start that main clause. Right? Because it was lightning outside, comma, we decided not to fly our kite. Now, the great thing about this sentence is I can move that clause around, right? I can put that at the end, because it was lightning outside. I can put it at the end. I don't need it at the start. Right? So our new sentence, we decided not to fly our kite, comma, because it was lightning outside. So recognizing where the subordinate clause is allows you to think about not just choices with that comma, but choices with sentence structure as well.